Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Avey Tare slasher flicks record, Enter the Slasher House. This is the latest full-length LP from this newly formed band fronted by multi-instrumentalist, singer, and songwriter Avey Tare, aka David Portner, who with this is dropping the umpteenth record that he's ever been affiliated with. If you've somehow been a hardcore fan of music for the past 10 years, but you're now first hearing of this guy, well, he is most known for being a pivotal member of the pioneering neo-psychedelic music outfit Animal Collective. And over the years with them has taken part in creating some of the most mind-bending music of the 2000s with records like Sung Tongs, Feels, Strawberry Jam, and Merriweather Post Pavilion. Music that's melodic, sweet, fun, but incredibly energetic, over the top, and eccentric, with its use of sound effects, sound manipulations, electronics. It's music that is incredibly colorful, it's overwhelming, it's freakish, but also a really good time. And the tracks that Avey fronts on Animal Collective records tend to be a little more volatile, explosive, and topped with his trademark boyish yelps and screams. Now, Avey Tare dropped a solo record back in 2010 titled Down There, an album that I was not a huge fan of, a record that I commended for its experimentation, but I did not find many of the songs or the vocals on this thing to be all that interesting. For me, it's really an unapologetically indulgent release. And in the space of time between Down There and this new Avey Tare record right here, Animal Collective, of course, put out their Centipede Hurts album, which I admit does not really rank all that high for me in the overall Animal Collective discography. I was happy to see Avey Tare playing a larger role on this record in terms of songs and vocals, especially after an album as poppy as Merriweather Post Pavilion, but this record was so overblown with effects for me. It's an album that unfortunately doesn't really feel enhanced by the experimentation that Animal Collective embarks upon, which is sad because that's typically one of the major highlights of any Animal Collective album. And I'm glad that some people really sat with this record since it got released and eventually the songs really started to translate and click for them, but that has never been, and I think never should be, the objective in enjoying a record from these guys. The way that Animal Collective distorts and experiments with sound has always been a highlight in their records, not something to listen through. Now, even though Avey's songs tend to be the more wild and experimental in Animal Collective's discography, I was sort of hoping that I would get a more enjoyable solo LP from him this time around for a few reasons. One, this thing is not simply a solo record. He's bringing on the help of other musicians, notably Angel Deradorian, you might know her from the Dirty Projectors, and drummer Jeremy Hyman. Reason number two, the song Little Fang, which is a fantastic lead single for this record, an awesome little pop tune. It feels so nocturnal with its deep, funky, heavy bass line, its jangly guitars, its sort of eerie, watery keyboard leads. The instrumentation sounds like something out of a Halloween special for a cartoon, but in a good way. I love the infectious background vocals on the chorus. The groove on this thing is stellar. And most importantly, I think this song showed off a pop sensibility that I thought really only Panda Bear was bringing to the table when it came to the Animal Collective dynamic. Really proved me wrong with this track. However, once I started to hear more tracks from this LP, I began to realize how misleading that lead single kind of was, like with the song Strange Colores. A song that has this freakish groove with all these heavy drums and dissonant keyboards, syncopated. The track also features all these layered, cycling vocal harmonies that reach that Animal Collective level of oddity. But much in the way Centipede Hurts was, this song to me is just like a little much. Obviously, this song and others on here feature a stronger pop sensibility than any of the tracks on Down There and many other Avey affiliated collaborative projects. But this track and many on here are so heavily layered with sounds that are so heavily treated with goofy sounding effects. Nearly everything on this record is springy, or it's watery, or it's kind of distorted. I would say sonically this album is really overdone. done. It's burnt to a crisp. The sound of the instrumentation on this LP is twisted and tortured to the point where they are sapped of any likable characteristics. They either become outright obnoxious to listen to, or just generally unenjoyable or uninteresting. While the song Little Fang really seemed to turn some heads when it first got released, I think the unapparent appeal of that song was how accessible and how traditional it was. A characteristic that feels even more clear as this track is put up against 10 other songs on this record. And what's even more disheartening is that the songwriting, the tune writing, the chord progressions on this LP aren't even as unorthodox as you might assume given the really zany sound set on this thing. I wouldn't say Avey is too far outside of what he has already done solo or done with Animal Collective on this record. There are a few likable tracks on this LP, but for the most part the songs, the tunes on here range from being incredibly underwhelming and just sort of breezing by, like on the song Duplex Trip, or the tracks on this record are attention-grabbing for all of the wrong reasons, like the song Catchy Was Contagious, a track where I actually don't mind the melody of the song, but every sound is so heavily treated with effects that the track just becomes a tacky puddle of slop. Some of the songs on this LP are just relentlessly loud and loopy, like the track The Outlaw, which has one of the most redundant hooks on this LP as well, with Avey screaming over and over that the outlaw is the future. I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't get anything out of that. Because I really do think Avey's vocals get kind of tiring by the end of the LP. And that's because of a handful of reasons. It's because of just how obscured they are occasionally by the effects, how the effects worsen the more unlikable characteristics of his voice, really make his voice more pitchy, more ear-piercing. Overall, I didn't really get anything out of this album that appealed to me outside of a few likable tunes and just a really bizarre aesthetic. I really don't think a lot of the songs, a lot of the tunes on this record are that interesting, and the sounds are just so beyond repair because of how abused they are with this very liberal use of effects. Again, it's just overcooked. It's just burnt to a crisp. It's jerky at this point. It's like impossible to chew through a lot of the sonic mishmash that has been assembled on this LP, in my opinion. I'm feeling a strong 4 to a light 5 on this record. Transition, if you've given this LP a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Avey Tare, forever.